Welcome back to the Uncanny Valley podcast. This is The Deep Dive.
Hello again.
Our mission today, as always, is to take the sources you provide, dig deep, and pull out the most vital knowledge nuggets.
Helping you get informed fast with maybe some surprising facts.
And hopefully just enough humor, well, maybe not humor today, given the topic, but enough engagement to keep you hooked.
And for this deep dive, we are plunging into, just one of the most influential texts ever, really, in literature, science fiction.
Absolutely.
A story that feels incredibly relevant even now, exploring creation, abandonment, what it even means to be.
We're drawing our insights directly from excerpts of Mary Shelley's timeless work, Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus.
Straight from the source. No bolts in the neck, necessarily.
Exactly. Forget the green makeup for a bit. We're guided by these letters from a really ambitious explorer heading into the unknown.
And then there's the harrowing first-person account from the scientist himself, the one who dared to play God.
And crucially, the chilling narrative of the consequence he unleashed. So the big question Shelley raises, what drives someone to seek forbidden knowledge? What happens when your creation is met with, well, total revulsion instead of wonder?
And how does isolation just fundamentally shape who you become?
Okay, let's unpack this stack of sources.
Right. So our story kicks off far away from, labs and Swiss villages. We're in the Arctic, icy expanse.
Freezing.
And we meet Robert Walton. He's young, ambitious, a polar explorer, and he's writing everything down in letters to his sister, Margaret Seville, back in England.
And right off the bat, you get a real sense of Walton's personality, his mindset.
You really do.
He doesn't just see the Arctic as, hardship and danger, the frost and desolation, as he calls it.
No, he's got this romantic view.
Totally. He sees it as a region of beauty and delight, talks about the perpetual splendor of the sun. It's this fervent, almost imaginative perspective, isn't it?
It really is. He sees the physical journey as a path to finding these profound wonders.
His ambition isn't just mapping, is it? It's bigger.
Much bigger. He's hoping to find a land surpassing in wonders and in beauty. Maybe discover the secret of magnetism, the compass needle's pull, or, refine astronomical observations.
And this isn't some whim. He says it flat out.
Oh.
It's been his favorite dream of my early years.
A lifelong obsession.
Yeah.
Glory, discovery, the whole package.
But here's something really key, right, in these first letters. Despite all the planning the ship, the sailors he calls dauntless. Walton reveals this crucial personal want. He desperately needs a friend.
Yeah, that's striking.
Someone who gets his vision, someone he can have this double existence with, face the world together, but also retreat into this shared, intellectual space.
He complains that other explorers' accounts, they just lack that deep companionship. He feels that absence keenly.
And this need for connection, it even shapes how he runs his ship.
How so?
Well, he mentions his distaste to the usual brutality exercised on board ship. He actually sought out a first mate known for kindliness of heart and the crew's respect.
Ah, okay, so it's not just about getting the job done. It reflects his own yearning for, maybe, a more humane kind of interaction, mutual regard.
Exactly. So the voyage gets underway. They reach high latitudes in summer. He notes the dangers, the floating ice sheets, but says the men are undismayed.
Standard stuff for them, I guess.
Right. He sees minor problems, gales, a leak, as just part of the job for experienced sailors, and he finds himself admiring the determined heart and resolved will of man against nature. Human endurance.
He clearly values that resilience.
And then things get weird. August 5th. The ship is trapped, nearly surrounded by ice, just stuck in this vast frozen silence.
And in that isolation, they see something totally inexplicable.
It's uncanny, isn't it? Comes out of nowhere. Walton describes seeing a low carriage fixed on a sledge and drawn by dogs pass on towards the north.
Okay, strange enough out there, but the figure guiding it.
That's the kicker. A shape of a man, but gigantic stature. Huge.
Which causes, as he puts it, unqualified wonder. Because they are, many hundred miles from any land?
Exactly. Seeing a human-like figure that big, just purposefully moving across the ice. It's deeply unsettling.
And the strangeness doesn't stop there. A few days later, they find another man on the ice, near death, arrived by a single dog sledge.
And his first words, despite being practically dead,
Yeah.
they're just bizarre.
What does he say?
He asks, before I come on board your vessel, whither you are bound, not help me or Where am I? But where are you going?
Wow. Okay, so this guy is clearly on a mission, something driving him that's more important than his own survival right then. Walton must have been floored.
Totally astonished. But they bring him aboard. He's weak, obviously, but Walton notes his immediate eagerness to be upon deck to watch for the sledge, the giant figure sledge.
He's still focused on the pursuit.
Intensely. And Walton finds himself really drawn to this stranger. His manners are conciliating and gentle, even though he's clearly a wreck.
Walton sees past the surface.
Yeah, he sees him as a noble creature in his better days, someone whose deep grief just pulls at Walton's sympathy.
And Walton, who's been desperately wanting a friend.
He thinks he's found him, right here, on the ice. He says his love grows as a brother for this stranger, Victor Frankenstein.
So this connection, born out of that isolation and Walton's own need, it basically unlocks the main story. Victor's confession.
Exactly. Which takes us back to Victor's beginning, his upbringing in Geneva.
Right. And Victor paints this picture of a really privileged, sheltered childhood, a family dynamic built on deep affection, what he sees as almost divine love from his parents.
His father is this upright citizen, but the story of how his parents got together, it's quite revealing, isn't it?
It really is. The source explains how Victor's father found his own friend, Beaufort, living in poverty, tried to help.
But Beaufort was too proud, retreated, and then died, leaving his daughter Caroline orphaned.
And Victor's father takes her in, shows immense tenderness, eventually marries her, aiming to, quote, recompense her for the sorrows she had endured.
And the language there is key, isn't it? He wants to shelter her, as a fair exotic is sheltered by the gardener, protect her from all hardship.
Which creates this environment where Victor, the only child for years, it feels like their plaything and their idol. A trust from heaven. His happiness is everything.
He calls his early life a train of enjoyment, taught patience, charity, self-control with a silken cord. Sounds almost too gentle, like he was shielded from reality.
Possibly. And then comes the introduction of Elizabeth. Victor's mother really wanted a daughter, finds Elizabeth in Italy.
And describes her in these almost mystical terms, ethereal beauty, a distinct species, heaven sent.
And here's a really crucial point, a knowledge nugget with huge implications later. His mother presents Elizabeth to him as a pretty present for my Victor.
A present. Wow.
Yeah, and that framing, it immediately casts Elizabeth not just as family, but almost as a possession. Victor completely internalizes this.
So he sees her as mine to protect, love, and cherish. Their relationship is more than sister, since till death she was to be mine only.
That idea of possession, of ownership in relationships baked in right from childhood, we'll see that echoed chillingly later with his creation.
The source also contrasts the kids. Victor is all intense curiosity, wants to divine the world's secret, learn the hidden laws of nature. He's into the metaphysical, the physical secrets.
While Elizabeth is calmer. Into poetry, nature's beauty. The source says she softened Victor.
And their friend Henry Clerval.
Adventurous, but also gentle, humane, influenced by Elizabeth's kindness, suggests that capacity for appreciating beauty and kindness was there in Victor's circle, but
He takes a different path.
driven by something else. His early reading is a big clue. He gets obsessed with alchemists, Cornelius Agrippa, Paracelsus, Albertus Magnus.
Not just fantasy, right? These guys represented an older, maybe discredited quest for forbidden knowledge.
Exactly. Transforming matter, elixir of life, raising spirits. When his father calls it sad trash, Victor just reads them secretly, becomes a disciple.
So even early on, he's drawn to mastering nature, cheating death, the alchemist's goals.
Then comes the turning point, a massive thunderstorm.
Right, he sees lightning destroy an oak tree. Here's an old man explain electricity, and this flips his focus.
Away from the alchemists, towards modern science, which seems built upon secure foundations.
But he looks back on this moment with this sense of fate, doesn't he? Like it was his guardian angel trying and failing to steer him away from disaster.
Yeah, he reflects, strangely are our souls constructed, and by such slight ligaments are we bound to prosperity or ruin. It's ironic. This turn towards science is presented as the path to his ruin.
So he heads off to university at Ingolstadt, feeling unprepared for being alone. Meets M. Kremp, the natural philosophy professor.
Who's gruff, dismisses his alchemy stuff.
But then he meets M. Waldman, chemistry professor.
Ah, Waldman. He's different, gentle, eloquent. And he talks about modern chemistry's power in these really captivating ways.
Like scientists can command the thunders of heaven, mimic the earthquake. Shelley's writing when people were buzzing that electricity, galvanized.
Right. Trying to reanimate tissue with currents. It was cutting edge, maybe a bit terrifying. Waldman taps right into that.
And Victor's reaction.
Immediate. Total. He says Waldman's words felt like the words of the fate announced to destroy me.
Wow.
It doesn't just spark interest. It fills his mind with one thought, one conception, one purpose. Feels like destiny.
So the pursuit of this scientific power is linked to Rowan from the very start. This is where the real obsession begins.
Driven by this fated purpose, Victor just throws himself into natural philosophy, especially chemistry. It becomes nearly my sole occupation. Devours books, studies constantly.
And this leads into physiology, the science of life itself, and the huge question.
Whence did the principle of life proceed? He sees it as this ultimate mystery, but one he thinks humanity is just about to crack. And he wants to be the one to do it.
To figure out life, he has to study death intimately.
Yeah, anatomy, charnel houses, watching natural decay and corruption. He mentions his upbringing shielded him from supernatural horrors, so he can face the grim physical reality without flinching.
And through all this morbid study, the idea hits him. He could potentially animate lifeless matter.
And this fills him with what he calls almost supernatural enthusiasm. He doesn't spill the secret of how, just the possibility. Feels like he's found a secret passage back to life, like that Arabian tale.
Then he makes a practical choice with massive consequences. He decides the creature will be of gigantic stature.
His reason is practical, easier to work on large parts than tiny ones, but the effect
Guarantees the creature will be an outcast, physically imposing, obviously different from everyone else.
The work itself is intense, solitary, driven by unremitting ardor. It's his secret which I alone possessed.
And the toll is immense. He gets pale, thin, nervous, jumps at noises, shuns people as if I had been guilty of a crime. Ignores nature.
Yeah.
Just focuses on finishing.
But the process, it's horrifying. He talks about the horrors of my secret toil, dabbling among the unhallowed damps of the grave.
And that chilling line. He tortured the living animal to animate the lifeless clay.
Yeah. That reveals the deeply unethical core of it. It's not clean science, it's violation driven by this dangerous obsession.
So after nearly 2 years of this, the moment arrives. Chapter 5. He animates the being.
He'd intended it to be proportioned, features selected, as beautiful. He had this ideal in mind.
But the reality... Oh boy, that's the gut punch, isn't it? The gap between dream and reality. Huge. The beauty of the dream vanished, replaced instantly by breathless horror and disgust.
He describes the yellow skin scarcely covered the work of muscles and arteries, the watery eyes and dun-white sockets, the shriveled complexion and straight black lips.
Only the lustrous black hair and pearly whiteness of the teeth offer this ghastly contrast. It's grotesque.
The second the creature's eyes open, the second it breathes. Victor feels zero triumph, just revulsion.
The sheer, messy, physical reality of the living thing is too much. He bolts, flees the apartment, can't stand the sight of it, spends the night in the courtyard, agitated, dreading, listening for the demoniacal corpse.
He says it's worse than a mummy, worse than anything Dante imagined. His body reacts to racing pulse, nearly fainting.
And the horror even infects his sleep. He dreams of his dead mother, her corpse, with graveworms crawling in the folds of the flannel. Ugh.
That imagery directly links his unnatural creation to desecrating life, death, the maternal figure. It's deeply disturbed.
And he wakes up from that nightmare to what?
The creature, standing right there at his bedside, holding up the curtain, eyes fixed on him.
Oh, God.
It makes inarticulate sounds. A grin wrinkled his cheeks, and it stretches out a hand. Maybe seeking connection. We don't know.
But Victor doesn't see connection. He sees threat.
Primal fear, rejection. He escapes again, runs into the streets, drenched, heart pounding with sickness of fear, dreading seeing it around every corner.
So he did it. Achieved the impossible. Animated life.
Yeah.
And his immediate reaction is total horror and complete abandonment.
That rejection right there is the first fatal step, the catalyst for everything that follows.
So the immediate aftermath is just intense suffering for Victor. He's terrified, running through the streets.
And then, pure chance, he bumps into his old friend, Henry Clerval.
What a relief that must have been. He feels this moment of calm and serene joy, actually forgets the horror for a second in that familiar comfort.
But Clerval sees him, and he's clearly in a terrible state. Thin and pale, looks like he hasn't slept in ages.
And when they get back to Victor's apartment, the thought of the creature still being there, or maybe just the sheer horror of it all, it breaks him. He collapses in a fit.
Which leads to this long, serious, nervous fever, Months long, Clerval nurses him through it.
And during the fever, he's delirious, right? Raving about the creature, hinting at the secret.
Exactly, revealing glimpses of the horror that shattered him. Clerval must have been so confused and worried.
His recovery lines up with spring. New life, ironically, contrasting with the death and decay he was obsessed with.
He feels bad about delaying Clerval's studies, but notice he's still not facing the real horror. He's trying to compartmentalize.
But you can't escape the consequences, can you? He gets a letter from Elizabeth back home.
Yeah. Starts with news about Justine Moritz, the servant girl, her backstory, her mother's death.
Setting her up as a character we care about.
And then the bombshell. Devastating news. Little William, Victor's youngest brother, found strangled.
Oh, man.
And Elizabeth is beside herself with grief, blaming herself because William was wooing this miniature portrait of their mother she'd given him, and now it's missing. Assumes robbery was the motive.
So Victor starts the journey back to Geneva with Clerval. He's melancholy, haunted.
Finds a bit of comfort in the familiar Swiss landscape, but it's temporary.
And it's as he arrives, just outside the city, at night, during a violent thunderstorm.
That timing is eerie, isn't it? Echoing the storm that shifted his scientific path years before.
Totally. And in a flash of lightning, near where William was murdered, he sees it.
The figure, instantly recognizable, the gigantic stature, the deformity, his creation.
And the realization just crashes down on him. It was the wretch to whom I had given life. He asks himself, what did he there? Could he be the murderer of my brother?
The horrible truth. He's unleashed this depraved wretch whose delight was in carnage and misery, or so he assumes.
He spends the night in agony, completely certain the creature is guilty. His abandoned creation has turned to murder.
But the horror isn't over. Not by a long shot.
He gets home, only to find out Justine Moritz is accused. Justine, who they all know is innocent and beloved.
The evidence is purely circumstantial. Her alibi isn't airtight. She was locked out of the city gates, spent time in a barn. Seems suspicious to the townsfolk.
And the key piece, the missing miniature portrait of Victor's mother, is found in her pocket.
So the trial is quick. There's popular prejudice against her. The judges are inclined to condemn.
And Victor, he's undergoing this unbelievable internal torture. He knows the creature did it, but he's paralyzed.
Why doesn't he speak up?
Fear. If he reveals his creation, they'll think he's mad. Or worse, it would destroy him, his family's reputation. He feels his agony is worse than Justine's because he holds this terrible, suffocating secret. The fangs of remorse tore my bosom, he says.
And Justine, she confesses falsely.
Under huge religious pressure, yeah, to get absolution. Not because she's guilty, but it seals her fate. Despite Elizabeth's defense, Justine is condemned and executed.
Another innocent victim.
And Victor's guilt is just crushing, explicit. He feels totally responsible for both William and Justine. This also was my doing, he cries internally. Sees his own thrice accursed hands behind it all.
He even thinks about suicide.
Briefly. But thoughts of Elizabeth and his father hold him back. He feels trapped in this cloud which no beneficial influence could penetrate. Compares himself to a wounded deer hiding away.
Meanwhile, Elizabeth is grieving, asking Victor if some fiend could really do this and go unpunished.
And Victor just recoils in terror at that, right? Afraid the creature is still nearby. The consequences are closing in on everyone he loves.
The cycle of suffering he started is escalating. It's brutal.
Right. So completely tormented by William's and Justine's deaths, weighed down by guilt, Victor tries to find some escape in nature.
Heads to the Alps, Chamonix, looking for solace in the sheer scale and power of the mountains. Trying to feel small before something mighty as omnipotence finds a little temporary relief.
But peace is short-lived. It's there, on the glacier of Montanvert, amidst all that grandeur, that the inevitable confrontation happens.
He sees the creature.
And his immediate reaction is just pure rage. Tries to attack it, wants vengeance for his family.
But the creature, it doesn't fight back, does it?
No. And this is where the source flips the script a bit. The creature speaks. And not just grunts, but eloquently.
It appeals to Victor.
Yeah, demands justice. Asks Victor, its creator, to just listen to its story before condemning it further. A powerful plea.
And its narrative starts right from the beginning, those first confusing sensations.
Exactly. Light, dark, pain, hunger, thirst, cold, complete vulnerability, total ignorance, just thrust into existence.
It talks about discovering fire, learning its dual nature, warmth and comfort, but also pain if you touch it. A basic lesson about the world's contradictions.
And frustration too, right? That it can't replicate this power. highlighting its limits despite its strength.
And then its first encounters with humans.
Brutal, formative, shouted at, attacked, driven away purely because of how it looks.
So it learns fear and hate right from the start. That immediate visceral rejection based only on appearance. It's devastating. Shapes its whole worldview.
It finds refuge, though, in that hovel attached to the de Lacy cottage.
And starts observing them secretly through a crack. Felix, Agatha, the blind father, later Safie, sees their kindness, their gentleness, but also their sadness. Learns poverty is causing their unhappiness.
And watching them suffer, it actually stirs empathy in the creature. This is a key point, isn't it?
Absolutely. Despite its own needs, it shows this capacity for kindness. It stops stealing their food, even though it's hungry, and starts secretly gathering firewood for them at night to help Felix.
So the being Victor made isn't inherently evil. It has compassion. It reflects the goodness it sees.
Right. Living alongside them, hidden, it starts to learn. Picks up language by listening to their articulate sounds, calls language a godlike science, slowly figures out words, meaning, emotion.
And Safie's arrival speeds things up.
Massively. Felix teaches Safie using Volney's Ruins of Empires. So the creature learns about history, society, government, religion, virtue, vice. The whole sweep of human complexity.
Learns about lawgivers, but also about people who massacre their species. Develops this ardor for virtue and abhorrence for vice, linked initially to pleasure and pain.
Then it finds other books. Sorrows of Werther.
Which teaches it about melancholy, isolation, things it feels deeply, but its own isolation is even more profound, unique.
Plutarch's Lives introduces high thoughts, heroes, big ideas about society, kingdoms, empires, but leaves it kind of clueless about everyday human life.
And then the most devastating find.
Frankenstein's journal, left in the pocket of the clothes it took from the lab.
Oh man. So it reads the details of its own creation.
Yes, and crucially, reads about its creator's immediate horror, revulsion, and disgust, the ultimate rejection, knowing you were made and instantly hated by the one being who should have cared.
That's just crushing.
Triggers a massive identity crisis. All this reading, all these observations, they just highlight how different it is. It sees human kindness, de Lacy's, Plutarch, but also cruelty, history, its own experience. It understands family, friends, but has none.
No history, no connections, just exists.
Leading to those agonizing questions. Who was I? What was I? Whence did I come? What was my destination? Sees itself as a monster, a blot upon the earth, pure agony over being utterly singular and rejected.
Despite all that pain, the identity crisis, knowing Victor was disgusted by him, the creature still tries one last time for connection.
With the de Lacy's, it decides to approach them, hoping the kindness it saw will somehow extend to it.
And its strategy is clever, focusing on the blind old man first.
Right. Figures his lack of sight will bypass the immediate horror reaction, give the creature a chance to appeal to his sympathy before the others see him.
It waits until the younger ones are out. Old de Lacy is alone, playing sad music. The creature goes in, pretends to be a traveler, speaks French.
And de Lacy.
Immediately kind,
Yeah.
sympathetic, shows that lack of visual prejudice. He reassures the traveler about human charity, even relates his own family suffering from injustice. He's receptive.
So the creature opens up a bit, reveals its friendlessness, its outcast state, hopes they won't judge by appearance.
Yeah, it's building up to the reveal, getting emotional, starting to sob. It's this moment of intense vulnerability.
And then
The others come back. Felix, Agatha, Safie, they walk in and see this creature with their father.
and their reaction is,
Instantaneous,
Mm.
visceral, violent. Safie shrieks, faints. Agatha faints. Felix attacks the creature, beats it, drives it out. Oh no, the one chance. Gone.
completely. That violent rejection from the only humans who had shown it any kind of model for goodness. That's the absolute turning point. It flees, hides, sees them abandon the cottage the next day. Despair sets in.
And the grief turns too.
Rage and bitterness. The source describes it as hellish rage. It gives up all hope of acceptance. Vows revenge on Frankenstein. For creating it. For abandoning it to this world of horror and violence.
The journey to Geneva now has a new, dark purpose.
Vengeance. And it's reinforced almost immediately. Sees a girl drowning, saves her,
An act of pure kindness.
and gets shot for his trouble by a man who sees him. Confirms the creature's belief. Humans only react with fear and violence. Its existence is the crime in their eyes.
So when he gets near Geneva looking for Victor and finds little William,
Initially thinks of maybe taking him, educating him perhaps, but then sees the miniature of Caroline, recognizes the connection to Frankenstein.
and the rage just erupts, strangles the boy.
But the murder itself isn't the end point. It wants to make Victor suffer. Remembers how Justine was punished earlier, those sanguinary laws of man?
Finds Justine asleep, plants the miniature on her.
It's chillingly calculated. It understands human justice systems now and weaponizes them to inflict maximum pain on Victor by destroying another innocent he cares about. The revenge is targeted through Victor's loved ones, using human tools.
After these first acts of revenge, the creature tracks Victor down in the Alps to make its demand.
Right, and it lays it out plainly. Its malice comes directly from its misery and rejection. I am malicious because I am miserable, it says. Am I not shunned and hated by all mankind? Powerful stuff.
It calls Victor its arch-enemy, not just for abandoning it, but for the very act of creating it in the first place. Vows inextinguishable hatred, promises to desolate your heart, make Victor suffer like it suffers.
But then it offers a way out, or rather makes its demand, calls it reasonable and moderate.
Which is?
A female companion. Another being as hideous as itself, someone to end its crushing loneliness, share its existence.
And it makes a promise in return.
A solemn one. Swears, by the earth which I inhabit, and by you that made me, that they'll leave humanity alone forever. Go live in the wilds of South America. It genuinely believes sympathy from another like itself will cure its evil passions. It won't curse Victor anymore.
So the core desire is still connection, not just destruction.
Seems so. And Victor, he's actually moved by the story, acknowledges some justice in his argument, feels compassion for the suffering he caused.
But he's also horrified, right? Thinks about the consequences. A race of devils threatening humanity. Plus, he still physically loathes the creature, making another one.
It's a huge dilemma, but the creature's oath, its arguments, and the undeniable threat of more revenge against his family, it forces Victor's hand. He agrees. Reluctantly.
He goes back to Geneva looking haunted, alarming everyone. His father's worried about his melancholy, the delayed marriage to Elizabeth.
Then Victor's trapped. He loves Elizabeth, but he has this horrifying promise hanging over him.
And here's that tragic misinterpretation. The creature's threat. I will be with you on your wedding night.
Victor thinks it means the creature will kill him on his wedding night.
Exactly. He sees the marriage as the trigger for the final showdown, where he expects to die feting the creature.
Oh, that's just awful dramatic irony.
It leads him to agree to marry Elizabeth quickly. Sees it as his unavoidable fate, his sacrifice to end the threat. He's completely wrong about who the target is.
So, to make the female creature, Victor says he needs to travel to England for studies. Hides the real reason.
His father hopes the trip will cure his gloominess. Agrees. Sets the wedding for Victor's return.
Victor travels with Clerval, whose cheerful enjoyment of the journey just highlights Victor's own misery and distraction. Clerval's planning his own future, while Victor
is dreading his task.
Yeah.
Gathering the materials for the second creation, he calls it torture. Not like the first time's frenzy.
Finds a really remote island in Scotland. Needs total isolation for this work. Sends Clerval away.
Working alone in this lab. The process is different now, isn't it?
Completely. He describes it as filthy, done in cold blood. His heart sickened at the work. It's not ambition driving him now, it's obligation and fear.
And as he gets closer to finishing, the doubts start creeping in. Big time.
Finally engaging with the ethics he ignored before. What if this female creature is evil too? What if she rejects the male creature? What if they reproduce?
That's the terrifying thought. A race of devils threatening humanity's existence. He questions his right to risk that just to save himself from the first creature's revenge.
And right at that peak moment of moral crisis, looking at the half-finished female.
He looks up, sees the creature at the window, watching him by moonlight.
And the creature's expression.
No.
Described as a ghastly grin full of malice and treachery.
Seeing that, Victor just snaps. The fear of the future, the potential horror, he decides he cannot risk it, cannot unleash this potential race of devils.
And in a sudden reversal, driven by fear and maybe a flicker of responsibility, he tears the female creature to pieces, destroys her.
The creature sees this, its only hope for companionship, gone in an instant.
Lets out a howl of devilish despair and revenge, confronts Victor.
And repeats the threat, but now the meaning is terrifyingly clear. I will be with you on your wedding night.
And this time, Victor gets it. The threat isn't against him, it's against Elizabeth.
Oh, God. After that, Victor vows never to resume the work. Gathers the remains, takes them out to sea, weights them, sinks them. Feels like a crime, but one born of trying to prevent a future horror. A very different motivation than the first time.
So after destroying the female and dumping the remains, Victor gets lost at sea, lands in Ireland, and is immediately arrested for murder.
Just like that.
Yeah. Witnesses saw a body washed ashore, saw a boat like his leaving the area. Circumstantial evidence points right at him. The magistrate, Mr. Kerwin, brings him in.
Orders him to view the body.
And it's Clerval, his best friend. The horror, the agony for Victor is immense. He cries out, basically confessing his role in the chain of deaths. Have my murderous machinations deprived you also? 2 I have already destroyed. Other victims await their destiny, but you, Clerval.
Directly linking Clerval's death to his murderous machinations, the whole disastrous project.
The shock triggers another long nervous fever. 2 months. He's delirious again, naming William, Justine, Clerval as his victims. Kerwin thinks he's mad, but shows kindness.
His father arrives from Geneva. Victor's first reaction is terror, thinks it's the creature coming for him.
Shows how deep the paranoia and fear run now. He recovers slowly, returns to Geneva with his father, still unable to confess the full truth. Fear of disbelief, fear of causing more pain, just consumed by guilt.
Then Elizabeth writes him that letter, worried, sensing his distance, asking if he loves someone else, offering to release him.
And that gentle letter triggers the memory of the threat. I will be with you on your wedding night.
And finally it clicks. The target isn't him, it's Elizabeth.
Devastating realization. Too late.
He resolves to face the creature, protect her. But here's the thing. He still thinks the final confrontation will be him fighting the creature. He still expects to die.
So he agrees to the wedding, quickly, 10 days. Sees it as sealing his own fate, the sacrifice needed to end it all, still fundamentally misreading the situation.
The wedding day arrives. Elizabeth is melancholy, maybe she senses something. They go to Avian for the night.
And Victor, still convinced he's the target, sends Elizabeth to her room while he stays downstairs, armed, waiting for the attack on himself.
Then he hears it. Elizabeth's shriek.
Oh no.
Rushes upstairs, finds her dead, strangled. The creature's vengeance perfectly, brutally executed, exactly as threatened. His miscalculation cost her life.
The final tragedies unfold quickly after that. Rushes back to Geneva, afraid for his father, his brother Ernest.
His father can't take it, dies of grief over Elizabeth's death. Victor is left completely alone, family destroyed.
He tries to tell the magistrate in Geneva the whole story.
But the magistrate struggles with it. Tale of spirits and supernatural events. Can't really believe it, deems the creature impossible to catch officially. Society just can't cope with this reality.
So with no official help, no family left.
Victor vows vengeance, dedicates his life to hunting the creature down, leaves Geneva forever, driven by a consuming purpose, just like his initial ambition, but now twisted into pure destruction.
And so begins the final chase. Victor's wanderings across continents. Tartary, Russia, heading north, fueled only by revenge, guided by memories of the dead.
And here's that weird, complex... to keep Victor on the trail. It seems the creature fears Victor might give up and die of despair, denying it the final confrontation, the culmination of their shared tragedy. Wow. So even in vengeance, there's this bizarre, inescapable connection. The creature needs Victor alive for the chase to have meaning.
The pursuit destroys Victor, physically and mentally. He becomes a shadow of a human being, just pure vengeance animating him.
Eventually, it leads them both back to the Arctic. Victor gets a sledge, dogs, pushes north, hears the creature's days ahead, loses the trail, despairs, rages, pushes on.
Until he's on that breaking ice floe, about to die, and sees Walton's ship, back where Walton's story began.
Aboard the ship, Walton listens, writes down Victor's story, sees him dying, consumed by this one goal.
And Walton starts to believe it, doesn't he? Especially after seeing the creature himself from the ship.
And seeing the actual letters from Felix and Safety that Victor somehow kept with him. Tangible proof.
Then there's the near mutiny. Sailors want to turn back. Victor, weak as he is, gives this passionate speech, trying to rally them for glory, imposing his obsession on them.
It fails. Walton agrees to head home if they get free. And soon after, Victor dies. His last thoughts still on catching the creature.
And then the creature appears.
In Victor's cabin, after he's dead.
Comes to see his creator's body and speaks. Expresses this incredibly complex mix of remorse and justification.
Recounts its suffering again. Repeats that core statement, I am malicious because I am miserable. Frames all its crimes, William, Justine, Clerval, Elizabeth, as the direct result of agony, rejection, abandonment.
And the loneliness. It hits hard. I am alone, it says. Notes even Satan had companions, highlighting its unique absolute isolation.
It feels self-loathing too, right? Says Walton's hatred can't match its own self-disgust.
Declares its work is nearly complete. Vengeance is satisfied now. Victor is dead, having suffered the loss of everyone, just as the creature lost everything it reached for. Claims it won't cause more harm.
And its final act.
Self-immolation. Says it will build its own funeral pyre at the North Pole to end its agony, destroy its hated form, find peace in annihilation.
Then it leaps from the window onto an ice raft and disappears into the Arctic darkness, leaving only the story, the echoes of suffering.
And so this deep dive loops back to the Arctic ice. We've traced this whole devastating cycle: ambition, creation, rejection, isolation, revenge, ultimately destroying both creator and created.
Through Walton's letters, Victor's confession, the creature's narrative, these sources force us to grapple with huge questions, don't they?
Absolutely. Responsibility, the creator to the created, society to the outcast, prejudice. And what really makes something a monster? Is it how it looks? Or is it the actions born out of that agony of being utterly rejected and alone?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the chilling, really profound details of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, straight from the source material you gave us.
And now, something for you to think about, based only on these sources we explore today. The creature asks, "Was I then a monster, a blot upon the earth, from which all men fled, and whom all men disowned?" But later it claims, "I am malicious because I am miserable." Which of those statements feels more strongly supported by the narrative we've just unpacked? And what does that difference, if you see one, tell us about the creature's nature according to Shelley's text?
Lots to chew on there. Until our next exploration, remember, knowledge is power.
But understanding especially of ourselves and others, that's wisdom.
You've been listening to the Uncanny Valley Podcast.